Thank you, Tonya. That was such a lovely introduction. So first of all, thank you very much for inviting me. It's really nice to kind of have the opportunity to talk to you about this event and how it went. And as you know, you guys were a really big part in organizing this. And before I start, I just want to say the conversation that we were just having before with all these ideas of what to do with money. I think there was a lot of things came up from the patient day that might actually really help you, steer you with ideas. So I'm really glad that can go hand in hand. So it's been mentioned many times, but this year's Big Cilia conference had a Patients' Day, and this was on the 4th of October. But before I talk about that specific day, why can't I go forward? Why not? Because it's down there. There we go. Right. So this Patient Day was actually kind of a sub part of the big annual, well, biannual CILIA20 series. So this subcommittee was a kind of a subgroup that was comprising of Bernd Schermer, who was the organizer of the big May meeting, Tess Harris from Ciliopathy Alliance, Pleasantin Mill from Edinburgh, and myself. And the main point of what we wanted to do was really to increase and improve the patient research scientist exchange. So we really wanted to build on experiences from past events and just push it forward and increase that. And when I'm talking about past events, they've been mentioned many times before, but this whole series actually started 10 years ago. And again, it was initiated by you guys, which is, incredible. And it was at the time supported by CILIA, which was a network of researchers across Europe working on cilia research. And this really was one of the first times in Europe that there was a really big meeting dedicated to scientists working on ciliopathies. There were over 20 countries represented. At the time, there was, I think, about 270 people attending. And what really was important in this meeting was the interaction also with the patient groups. So they had a welcome reception that you guys put on. Patients were invited. Oftentimes, scientists, for the very first time ever, had any contact with a patient. There was also some introductions and keynotes that were more geared to patients, although I don't think there were that many patients in the audience throughout the whole meeting. And this really set the tone. So this was in London, I should have mentioned, hosted at UCL. And this really set the tone for the rest of the CILIA meetings, because it became very apparent that it was absolutely essential to merge kind of the two worlds together. And a lot of the other research conferences that you go to, that's completely missing. And again, this really was something that the Ciliopathy Alliance can be very proud of, because they're the ones that kind of initiated this, and it kept on growing. So this was London. Phil Beals was the main organizer for that. Then 2 years later, the CILIA conference was held in Paris. I couldn't find that much information about it on the website, and I actually didn't attend. But I think this was also one of the first times that individuals, that there was actually lots of socializing going on, not just in, lecture settings, but there really was more input. So I think some of you might recognize yourselves in these pictures. I found this on the internet, so I thought it was okay to use. It seems to me that the gala dinner at this event was a big highlight, and really just showed how important it is to meet and interact, and not, in maybe a more relaxed setting. There was also a few patient scientist presentations. More on this meeting, I don't know, because I wasn't there, and like I said, you couldn't find the program online anymore. But I think it was definitely nice to see that there's obviously a continued and an increased interaction. Then came Amsterdam, as many of you might remember, and again, this was one of the first times that the patients actually got to present, and Tess presented a patient perspective, and talked about patient public involvement. There was also talks from clinician scientists geared to patients about the European reference networks. And there was also, I think it was a kind of a coffee meet and greet session. And as far as I remember, I do think that Drina and Michael Parker were also part of the welcome, the dinner at the end. I can't remember, but there definitely was an increase in involvement. Copenhagen was 2 years later, 2018. In the vein of what was going on, there were more patient representatives attending. There were roundtable discussions. We had not one, but 2 exchange sessions. So you can see that this was something that was very, very welcomed by the conference organizers. And it was a really, really keen and critical part and it's also one of the draws for scientists to come to the meeting, because they're very keen to have be introduced and to get to meet patients as well as talk about the science. So then came Cologne. So Cologne was obviously supposed to be in 2020, and then it became 2021, and then it became 2022. And when it was clear that we were going to organize it, we thought, well, we want to go one step above, and we actually want to have our own special day. So the idea was, first of all, to have a specific day specifically designed for patients and representatives, as well as more increased integration, longer sessions, more intense interaction with the scientific community. And very briefly, and I'll talk about all this in a little bit more detail, we wanted to make sure this was free to attend, so that was very important. We ended up having over 33 participants. They came from predominantly Germany, the Netherlands, UK, USA, and someone also came from Georgia. The idea was to have talks and workshops just for the patients. We also had a specialized poster session to disseminate information. Because we were based in Germany, we were obviously expecting a lot of German participants. So we also had translation service for the German patients. So it was audio from English into German. And also we wanted to increase the interaction. And again, I'll talk about this in a little bit, but some of the scientists, especially the new young scientists, they're always a little bit nervous about talking to patients. And so we were really trying to loosen that up a bit. And I think that worked to some extent. So that was in a nutshell. So this is now the more detailed version. And obviously there's lots going on. It looks very busy, but in principle, you can break it up. We had kind of the first part, which was the opening of the Patients' Day, and a real section of events just for patients. Then we had the opening of the official event, and there were specific talks specifically just for the patients. Then there was actually the highlights of the main meeting was this exchange where the patients and the organizations actually took the stage. And then the other point was all day long we had some possibilities to get scanned at the neocyst sonography. That was something that was just going on in the background. For all of these points, I'm going to now say a little bit more and go through them a little bit more detail. I'm wondering, do you guys want to ask questions along? Oh, sorry. First of all, do you guys want to ask questions along the way, or should I just keep talking because it's being recorded and ask questions at the end? I don't know what's best. Okay, Tanya's nodding. Okay, so I'll just talk and then you can ask questions at the end. And also at the very end of the day, we all went to the brewery and drank beer. I'll say a bit about that at the end as well. So the first part, as I mentioned, was just for the patients. And patients were invited to come slightly earlier and set up kind of their stands and booths. So I have to admit that it was a little bit chaotic at start because the big conference was kind of getting going. Lots of people were arriving and showing up, and we did forget coffee. And I will say I feel very, very guilty that we forgot coffee, and now we realize how important it is to always have coffee when you're organizing a meeting. So our first section really was an opening and introduction by Bernard, and then what we wanted was kind of a discussion session. We wanted We had some clinician scientists who, really are leaders in their field. And Haywood Omran was going to give an general introduction, and we just wanted the scientists to kind of stand up in 2 or 3 words, say the key things that they're working on, to initiate a discussion. Because we really wanted this to be an opportunity for the patients to ask the scientists, or the clinician scientists, questions. And it was okay. It went. The problem is the scientists, we told them 2 to 3 minutes, and of course they spoke at least, I think, Tess, you were the only one that stayed in time, and everyone spoke much, much longer. So at the end, there wasn't as much time for questions. And I think because it was the very, very beginning, a lot of the patients seemed a little bit hesitant. And maybe there was, asking a question in a big room. So that, whilst it was good and it got the ball rolling, it wasn't as much of a discussion as we had hoped. However, that did change. So we all then went for lunch, and that seemed to help getting people more into discussions. And what worked incredibly well is the World Cafe. This was organized by Tess Harris. And again, I'm going to go into that a little bit more detail, but it really seemed that going for lunch with everyone, chatting with everyone, really kind of broke the ice for the World Cafe. So when I mentioned World Cafe, this was actually Tess's idea. And I think she had done this for another event before. So in the room, we had 4 tables with 4 questions. And everyone got placed in different tables and discussed that question. And 20 minutes later, the bell would ring and everyone had to move to a different table. So it really meant that there was a good kind of mix of people. We had a mix of different nationalities, different experiences, different ciliopathies. But it was really interesting to kind of see how each specific question that I'll show you in a minute was kind of worked on as a group collective effort. And so the questions we actually had was, what are the main issues that you deal with? What would help you or your family the most? What do you see as the main obstacle to cilia research? And what would have made your life easier in the past? So these were some ideas that Tess, myself, Bernard and Pleasantine came up with that we thought might be helpful. And I think, again, next time, maybe it'd be great to get some ideas from you guys, what questions we could add, and if these are the right questions to be asking. The results from the questions, we collected all the results from the questions, and each table had a scribe, so they could then note things down and stick them on the board. And so these are the results. I know that Tess has already photographed them, and I've actually got them in my drawer. I actually think there's a lot of very, very valuable information on these slides. I mean, I'm realizing it's very small, you won't all be able to read it, but I think there was one thing that really comes up a lot is awareness, information, a need for sharing experiences. So, for example, what would help you or your family the most? Support for the family, collect knowledge, raising awareness in doctors. I really feel that this information in these cards might be very helpful for you as an organization moving forward, and especially with all the ideas that were just being discussed. So again, Tess has, these are actually her pictures. She's got the pictures. I've actually got the cards myself. I'm happy to give them and send them to you. But again, this isn't the forum to read through them all, but I think there could be some very helpful information for you. We also had a wonderful artist, so Pleasantine Mill organized this, who I think her name was Sirena Sketches, and she took notes during these sessions and came up with this beautiful infographic, which again, I think has been shared on social media. And I think, you're allowed to use it and share it and put it on the website. You might want to check with Bernard, but I think that's the case. Again, I'm not going to go through it. I just wanted to show it. I think it's absolutely wonderful. And it's actually hanging up in my lab. And I'm sure everyone can print it out and put it up in their labs. So that was the first part. And then we came to this kind of the second part where the patients were part of the main Cilia meeting. So it officially started at 3 o'clock. Bernard Chama gave an opening, and this was in the big hall downstairs. Fiona has already mentioned, I think there were 411 people on site, 129 online. So we reserved seats at the front so that all the patients had front row seating. And specifically, the first session was designed, and we'd invited clinical scientists who we knew were good speakers, whose work was very relevant to patients, and they knew that there were going to be patients in the audience, so their talk was geared for them. And I think that went really well. We had a great talk from Elizabeth, and she really got the ball rolling. And I think it was hopefully something that was more understandable than some of the more nitty-gritty science talks. Then we had a coffee break, and then we had our keynote lecture by none other than Phil Beals, who, as you know, is one of the founders of this conference series. I think is also one of the founders of Ciliopathy Alliance. I'm not quite sure. I feel Phil does everything. But that was obviously fantastic keynote. And he also got his own infographic. I think it's called, infographic that this artist had designed for him. So again, I'm sure that I think it's publicly available, so it might be something that you want to put on your website. So after Phil's keynote came what was, I think, for the scientists in the audience, and especially a lot of the trainees, one of the absolute highlights of the event. So this session was called, Exchanges, Patient, Clinician, Scientists. But what we really, really wanted is to give the patients and the patient organizations a platform and a voice to actually speak to the scientific community, to kind of show them the importance of the work that you're doing. And this, I think it really goes both ways. I think we had fantastic speakers. Again, I'm not going to list them all. You can see their names here. And they presented a lot of the work that they do as the organization, the challenges that the communities face. And at the end, we also had some personal perspectives from affected individuals. And I had so much feedback afterwards from people saying how inspiring they found this session. And just like you said, it wasn't just people that, scientists that work in the lab have been working on Cilia for 20 years or so, but it really was, there's so many new people, especially this conference, it's for the first time that we'd had a conference for so many years. For many of the students, it was their first ever conference, and they were absolutely blown away that they had this experience and could actually, meet people and see what it was that they were working for. And so that really, from a patient perspective, I hope that they got the opportunity to give their story and kind of talk about it. But from a scientific and from the scientist's perspective, this really was very inspirational. And after this session, we kind of wanted this momentum to keep going. And so we had kind of a welcome reception. And so again, the patient groups had their little stands, and there was drinks and cocktails. It was a little busy, it was a little chaotic. You can imagine 411 people. The space was maybe not as optimal for such interaction, but I think everyone had a good time. And I do think that there was that kind of mingling, and people were, because they just heard these wonderful talks, more likely to come up and actually engage with the patients. The other thing we had was the poster session. So this was something else that we really wanted to do to give the patients, again, more information. So all the scientists that had registered a poster were asked if they'd also be interested in doing a patient version of the poster. And so of all the people that had said they'd do it, percentage-wise, I don't know, Tonya and Tess then chose, I think it was 10 posts from the abstracts. They chose 10 posters that they'd like to see as a real poster, and these were then displayed for all the delegates of the patient meeting. Were then also asked to award a poster. They could give poster prizes, and so they could vote which poster they thought was the best. I think the feedback that I got from some of the patients is that even though these were specifically designed to be easier, they were still a little too scientific. So I think when we move forward, we need to be very clear that when we're talking to patients, they don't know what an acronym is. They don't understand what CRISPR is. And even if you talk about cell culture, we need to go one step simpler, so that patients can really understand what's going on. And I think it's something that the community needs to learn how to engage. This explaining scientific language in a way that non-scientists can understand is something that we definitely need to get better at. But I think that's something where the Ciliopathy Alliance can help and say, this is what we need. And it's just so yeah, long story short, it can get better, but I think it's a good place for future conferences. The other thing that we actually also had was these activities for kids and former kids, and this was the idea was, again, to kind of break down the barriers, and to have some games, and actually we did DNA extraction of fruit for people who might not find it easy just to come into conversation, but just to have an event and have something to work with, or some drawing, and to engage with scientists engage with patients, and vice versa. It wasn't actually used as much as we had hoped. It was there. I think there was so much going on. It was such a busy first day. Like I said, people hadn't seen each other for years. So I think a few people were able to make use of the service, but maybe if circumstances were different, but I still think we should offer it, but I don't think we need to worry too much about it in the future. I think there's enough going on. So the last part that I kind of just wanted to touch on, this happened all day long. So in Germany, there's a consortium called NeoCyst. And this is kind of a consortium of various clinicians working on cystic kidney diseases. And they actually were there, and they were offering sonograms for all the patients. And they were there, to be honest, I didn't have much to do with them. I think Dagmar might actually be able to say a bit more about this, because I think she was more in contact with the organizers of NeoCyst. But they came, and I think they were very happy because they got lots of people to scan. And that was something else that we were offering for the patients, to have the opportunity to get a scan. And afterwards, unfortunately, I have no pictures of this, and I don't know why. And I think that might be by design. Tonya swears she didn't take any pictures, but I don't believe her. This actually was a little bit of it wasn't really planned. We kind of hijacked another sub meeting that was going on. We all just went to the pub, went to the brewery, and it really was a nice mix of scientists, clinicians, patients, students. Even though we'd had the welcome reception, for some reason, going out away from the venue, being in a different place, literally just sitting in the pub talking, it was a really, really fun. And I think it really, again, broke down even more barriers, and people actually started becoming, I don't want to say becoming friends, but it was not just we're socializing at the welcome reception, but it was a step further than that. And I think again, for the students, it was one of the highlights of their trip. I think it was free beer, so of course it's going to be their highlight. But I think also for some of the patients that we came with, for them it was great to be sitting next to some of the experts in the field and literally just sharing a pint. So they weren't pints, they were very small, but you kept on getting new ones all the time. So with that, kind of the take-home messages. So what we hope is that for the patients that we offered information and access to clinicians and scientists working on their diseases. We also hope that we gave the patient groups chances to maybe connect internationally. We really hope that they could see just how far the field has come in 10 years, the level of enthusiasm for cilia research, and that there's hope. And I think I will never forget Tonya, really excited. I've never seen Tonya smile and in a setting like this and be, and of course you smile all the time, but actually saying there is hope. It's the first time that Tonya actually said there is hope, and I'd never heard her say that before. So that meant a lot to me, that one comment. And so for the researchers, this conference series, this interaction with you guys is really what makes this conference series, without a doubt. And it was a huge success. It has been in the past. I am actually not taking it away from the previous meetings, because I know that that's been a real important aspect of it. And as you say, it's been growing, and the patient part has been growing more and more. So it makes it makes these conferences a big success. People want to come to the Cilia conferences because we have you guys. And I think also we can't underestimate just how important and untypical that is. Again, we're going to this ASCB meeting tomorrow, and I don't think there will be one patient there. And I can guarantee you that 99.9% of the scientists there won't even know how to access a patient or talk to a patient. It really is not typical. I should also say, in my university, when I tell people that I do so much with the patient engagement, they're like really scared of it. They were like, oh God, I'd never talk to a patient. I'd never talk to a patient. So it just shows you that there's still for us in the cilia field, this is becoming the norm. And that's something you could be really proud of, actually, and that maybe other fields might start having some of that. And this is a very quick slide that I just put together because Hannah was asking about CILIA2024. I don't know how much I'm allowed to or can or want to say, but obviously there is a CILIA2024. It will be happening in autumn 2024. I think the official date is about to be released in a few weeks. We have a subcommittee that I'm organizing and just putting together. So far on this committee, we have Fiona Copeland, Roxanda Bachmann from Switzerland, and Ben Dert, I always forget his last name, I'm so sorry, Ben, from BBS Netherlands. So we're happy if one or two other people would like to join us. Definitely let me know. We haven't had our first meeting yet because we were kind of waiting for this. I wanted to put this all together so we had something to work with, but we will be meeting early in the new year. Very quickly, registration needs to be simplified. We need more time between events and for events. Language barrier, obviously it might be different in Dublin. Wrapping up at the World Cafe. Unfortunately, we ran out of time and we had to rush off. So that's something I think we need to work on, because there's lots of very good information there. Of course, the layout and the posters, that needs to be improved, but more coffee. Next time, there will be more coffee. And with that, I'll stop.
That's great.
Happy to take questions.
Thank you so much, Helen. I'm sorry, I have to say we're running a little bit over, and I apologize for that. Elizabeth was going to field questions. Elizabeth, if we have very quickly, because we...
Yeah, there are a couple of reflections. So Michael Parker was asking about the James Lind Alliance, which it turned out to be very expensive, so we didn't go with that, but it might be something we need to revisit. And then I think also he had a comment on overestimate rather than underestimate at the end of on the last slide. I don't know the answer to that, Michael. You're better at this sort of thing than I am.
Oh, Helen, I think that was your final slide.
Yeah. Sorry.
Underestimate.
It was, and it's a common mistake. Just watch the BBC.
Terrific. I'm so sorry,
Just
folks.
as feedback, I think it's incredibly encouraging, the development of the patient day. This has been a hobby horse of mine, or was a hobby horse of mine, and it's great that it seems to be growing momentum. That's brilliant. Thank you.
I am sorry, we are looking at drawing the meeting to a close, because that was a wonderful summary, Helen. That really gave a fantastic picture. Does anyone have a quick comment or question for Helen in the very last closing minutes? Phil's already had to leave.
Can I make a quick comment?
Yes, please.
Can I just say thank you, Helen? I think it was an absolutely brilliant patient day. It was really good. You've just given a really good summary, and I salute you for being so reflective on what could be done better. But I think you did a brilliant job. I really think it was fantastic. I think the patient posters are such a good idea. I take your point that it might be, maybe there's some more learning to be done, but I just think it's a process, isn't it? And I think you've started it. So I just think you've done a brilliant job.
Thank you. But like I say, it wasn't just me. This was a whole group of us. And like I say, it's really, like I say, Michael, you started this with the Ciliopathy Alliance. I know this has been going on for years, and so I'm really just like moving it forward and keeping it going, because, you know, I'll be honest, this is how you get the young people. This is how you get more people and more scientists working on it. And I'm incredibly proud of the Cilia community. We are a lot more collaborative than other scientific communities, and I honestly believe part of that is because we're patient focused.
Brilliant, with some wonderful ambassadors for the whole thing. I'm afraid I am going to have to draw this to a close, and I want to.
Sorry, I didn't realise. I hope it wasn't.
No. That's you kept completely to time, Helen. I'm not a reflection of the previous bit. I would like to thank Fiona Copeland for being a co-chair and reminding me of what I was supposed to be doing today. It's really fantastic to get this international and widespread set of people at this meeting. We want to try and increase our participation. We're going to have a follow-up email where we just give you the contacts, but we're really keen to have people's comments. Anything further, we've had some really good input so far, but we will follow up just so you know who to contact if you do have any further thoughts and any other business from anybody. Thank you very much. A special thanks to Tess, who takes the minutes for the meeting and keeps us all organised. Thank you so much for all the documents, Tess, particularly to you. And yeah, look forward to seeing everyone at our next event, and we will be in touch.
Okay.
Very much, everyone.
Thanks very much.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk about it.
Yeah, thank you. Safe travels to you.
Thank you.
Okay.